Welcome back to Sunrise. Yes, Mr. Femi Falana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, joins us next. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Good morning.
Well, yes, we heard your comment about this planned protest against the call to sack, in support of the call to sack the service chiefs. But the comment credited to the presidential spokesman, where he expressed fears, I think said about 2,000 people have been mobilized, and then this may just get out of hand. Is it out of place for him to raise that kind of caution?
Very, very out of place. 2,000 people? Is the Nigerian state, Nigerian government telling us that a protest by 2,000 people cannot be managed? What on earth is going on? We have to recognize the right of Nigerians to protest for or against the government. And just last week in Abuja, sponsored agents of the government staged a protest asking the government to expel Amnesty International from Nigeria. Even against me. The government had sponsored, some lumpen elements to demonstrate in Abuja.
Do you think the government sponsored them?
Oh yes, I have evidence. I'm now giving my evidence to the authorities. So if the government can mobilize support and get in its own agents to demonstrate in favor of its own policies, Nigerians must also be given the opportunity to demonstrate against policies of the government considered inimical to their interest. And it's unfortunate, and I want to believe that some of these statements oozing out of the presidency are meant to embarrass the government, particularly President Muhammadu Buhari.
Why would they do that? That's a spokesperson.
Because the case of ANPP and Inspector General of Police, decided by the Court of Appeal in December 2007, on the rights of Nigerians to demonstrate without police permit, without the fiat of the government, was handled for the former leaders of the ANPP, who are now in the APC, by my humble self, from the High Court to the Court of Appeal. And that is the law today. Following that judgment, the National Assembly in March 2015, amended the Public Order Act by imposing a duty on the police to provide security for Nigerians who wish to demonstrate.
The police don't
That is the law today.
But they don't seem to be carrying out, obeying that kind of law.
Well, for instance, whenever I've had cause to lead a demonstration or participate in one, we have always written to the police for protection, not for permit. And I must confess, so far, I haven't had any case where we have been told, don't demonstrate. The only time, I think, last year, Professor Walecho Yinka and I were to address a meeting.
Right.
And the police got there and said, no, it won't take place. I said, no, call the authorities.
But is the
This is a right we have fought for and won. And in fairness to them, we're allowed to have the program.
But is the presidency asking for this protest to be stopped or cautioning? Is that what's the case here?
I think you should direct the question to the man, your colleague that issued the statement.
Okay.
And you know why it's particularly embarrassing is that on the 20th of November 2014, the leading candidate the presidential candidate of the APC, General Muhammadu Buhari, now President Muhammadu Buhari, the then chairman of the party, APC, Chief John Oyegu, two ministers now, Dr. Sylvester Onu and Mr. Rotimi Amechi, led others to demonstrate in Abuja against insecurity in the country. And there were more than 2,000 people in the rally. Heavens did not fall. And the heavens will not fall this time around.
So here's what the presidency said, and I'll just quote that. The presidency wishes to caution a section of the political class against misleading the public and inciting protests against the heads of military institutions. So some will say, is this saying don't protest, or saying, you know,
Now, if you read
put some
that
caution?
statement very well,
Right.
the presidency is asking Nigerians not to protest.
In clear terms.
It's a blackmail. I mean, don't protest.
What part of it was clearly stated there that don't protest?
Well, it is very clear if you read down the line. I mean, you know, members of the public are being warned to be very careful. People have been paid. 2,000 people have been mobilized, as it were, to breach the peace of the country. And the implication of that is that we're going to stop it. Because you didn't need to make a statement if you are not opposed to the protest. All the government is required to do, once you are aware that Nigerians are going to demonstrate, is to provide security. And if for any reason you have information that there may be a breach of the peace, you will call the leaders who are planning to protest. This is information at our disposal. They may then assure you that there will be no breach of the peace. Because everybody must be interested in law and order in the country.
Now, the whole idea of the protest is concerning the service chiefs. Many want the service chiefs gone. Now, the Chief of Army Staff has also said that removing us from office may not necessarily solve the problem. How do you react to that?
I think we are getting a number of things wrong. The law says, once you are 60 by age, or once you have put in 35 years into the service.
Civil service.
Yes, and as well as under the harmonized rules for the military. That is the same provision. Now, once you have put in 35 years, or you turn 60, you are required to be retired if you don't want to go. Now, as I'm talking to you, military officers are leaving the service every day once they turn 35.
Does the president have the power? One moment, sir. One moment, sir. Does the president have the power to keep them in office or not?
No. You see, we have to realize that we're operating under the rule of law. The power of the president to extend the service of service chiefs or anybody in the public service, right, cannot be justified under the provisions of the Constitution, as well as the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. You can't be kept in the service if you and I join the service on the same day, while I'm asked to go. That is discriminatory, which is not acceptable under the law. 2, and this is much more serious. My colleague, the current minister in the Ministry of Labor, Mr. Festus Keyamo, SAM, filed an action under the Jonathan administration. The service chiefs cannot be appointed without legislative approval. And of course, President Jonathan had to seek the approval of the National Assembly in line with the judgment of the court. Now, going by that judgment, the president cannot extend the expired tenure of service chiefs without going to the National Assembly. So when the National Assembly recently passed a resolution, I think the House of Reps, that the service chiefs should go, they should have rely on that judgment to say, you cannot extend without our approval. If you cannot appoint without our approval, that is the position of the law.
Does that mean that the president is breaking the law?
For sure. For sure.
Which law in specific?
I mean, it's like...
Which specific law, sir?
I've just told you that under the public service rule, under the harmonized rules for military officers in Nigeria, right? And under section 26 of the Armed Forces Act, which empowers the president to make rules and regulations for the military. There's no provision for extension of tenure beyond the period stipulated by law. It had been done in the past, but that does not make it right. There is equality before the law. So you can't extend the service of certain officers while you ask others to go upon putting in 35 years into the service or upon the attainment of 60 years, you know.
So I'd like to also get your interpretation, because people also refer to Section 218 of the Constitution, sub 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
In the part that says the powers of the President as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federation shall include power to determine the operational use of the armed forces of the Federation. And sub 3 specifically states that the President may, by directions in writing and subject to such conditions as it thinks fit, delegates to any member of the armed forces of the Federation his powers relating to the operational use of the armed forces of the Federation. So some also say that perhaps this is the president using his discretion, saying, this is how I feel it should
Now,
go.
if you go further, that section empowers the president to appoint service chiefs with the approval of the National Assembly. It does not say the president, in exercising his powers as commander-in-chief of the armed forces, will breach other laws in the country and other provisions of the Constitution.
So if this is a breach, why hasn't it been escalated, as it were? Because, I mean, you're saying that this is a break of law.
I can assure you it's already been escalated. To the best of my knowledge, a suit will be filed during the week in respect of this matter.
But how far can we go with this when comments attributed to the Speaker describing this as a knee-jerk response, even though the House came up with a resolution? So if the leadership of the National Assembly won't push for this, can we go that far?
Well, you know, it's not about pushing. It's about what the law says. It's not about pushing.
Shouldn't they be on the side of the law?
Well, they should be. The House has already passed a resolution.
So the Speaker's comment
So the
is immaterial.
Speaker's comment cannot, you know, set aside the resolution of the House, which have not been set aside or impugned. So that resolution stands. And what is important? Because I defend quite a number of members of the armed forces. And the president must be prevailed upon to appreciate that we may also be undergoing what you might describe as internal sabotage.
To the fight against insurgency.
Yes!
Why would that
By many people, many officers and other members of the armed forces who simply feel, since these are the people who can stop insurgency or terrorism, let them go ahead. Because the Chief of Army Staff himself has had an occasion to accuse members of the armed forces of not doing enough.
So are you saying that it perhaps is not entirely the fault of the service chiefs that we're where we are today? Is that what you're saying?
No, you see, it's their fault in the sense that on a daily basis, they are retiring officers who have served for 35 years or who are 60 years and above. They are retiring them. Some will go today. It is their fault not to appeal to the president to allow them to go or to resign.
But how could members of the armed forces be sabotaging this when it's a command and control center? They give you an order, you carry the order out.
I mean, for instance, I can tell you, because again, as I said, I defended some officers and other ranks in 2013, 2014. Some of them simply said, we didn't join the armed forces to commit suicide.
But they
So you must give us weapons to fight. And when they were not given weapons, it was difficult to move to the battlefield to confront well-armed insurgents. They were charged with mutiny. And I made it clear to the members of the Special Military Tribunal and the General Court Martial that you have no right. You have no right not to entertain their complaint, because Section 179 of the Armed Forces Act stipulates that a complaint made to the authorities cannot constitute an offense. So if you haven't given me weapons to fight, and I know money has been released, and at that time, $1 billion was approved to buy weapons, and those weapons were not bought. For me, there was justification in saying, we're not going to fight without, equipping us. Yeah, they were charged, convicted and sentenced to death, 70 of them. But I had to make a case. Made a representation on their behalf. And one of the points I made was that President Muhammadu Buhari has since inaugurated an arms procurement panel, which had discovered that the bulk of the money earmarked to, purchase weapons was diverted and stolen. And I think, based on such representation, the authorities decided to commute the death sentence of the 70 soldiers to 10 years imprisonment. I mean, we have got four of them released on the orders of the Court of Appeal. We are currently in the Supreme Court for the remaining orders. Because I believe they shouldn't be in jail. Those who should be in jail are walking out there.
All right.
Who committed crimes against humanity by stealing money meant for procurement of arms to fight terrorists.
All right, then we'll anchor at that point and keep an eye on what may eventually happen out there today about this protest. We appreciate your comment on this morning, sir.